Welcome to episode 7 of the 2020 ARC Travel Connect virtual series. This is a fireside chat with Mike Premo and Dave Hilfman. And Dave was nice enough to actually bring the fire to us, so I didn't have to light my home. A couple quick housekeeping notes before we get started. If you would like to connect with us on your favorite social media channel, we would love for you to do so and use the hashtag TravelConnect2020. Additionally, if you want to celebrate the career of one Mike Premo, we also ask that you use the hashtag #ThankYouMike. If you go onto the ARC LinkedIn page, you'll there that will let you give a little nod to the man. So with that, I'm actually going to just kind of dive right in here and welcome Mike, welcome Dave. For those of you who don't know Mike or Dave, which I can't imagine there's many of those people, Mike is the president and CEO of ARC, who is retiring at the end of this year. And Dave is the interim executive director of GBTA, who retired from United Airlines last year?
Yeah, a couple years ago. Yeah, it seems like forever.
So to open, let's go back to this time last year, right? Mike, you just announced the retirement. Dave, you were living the good life. And then something happened. There was this little pandemic that popped up and things kind of went sideways. So I wanted to hear from both of you, just what were you planning? And then kind of how did it actually go?
Mr. Premo, please, you first.
I'll start off. I think like everybody in the industry, 2019 was a great year. We had processed $97.4 billion of air sales sold by ARC accredited agents. I was personally looking forward to cracking the $100 billion level in 2020, and all systems were go. We had done a couple of investments in 2019. At the holidays, we completed our negotiations with New Travel. We were about to go public with that as we went into the new year. And we were really looking forward to executing on our strategy around omni-channel, continuing to support our data customers and our agency accreditation customers, airlines and agencies. So, we, like so many, we thought it was going to be a really terrific year. And I was looking forward to having a great send-off to cap off my career. Of course, we had already selected Lori Reiches to succeed me. So I was looking forward to a fairly leisurely year of, handing the reins over to Lori and getting out and travel and trying to emulate the famous Dave Hilfman Global World Farewell Tour of 2018, I think that was. And even though I, can't really hold a candle to that, but definitely was not expecting the challenges that this year presented.
Yeah, and hey, from my perspective, it was, 2019, I just was coming off retirement with United after between United and Continental, 30 some years. It did have that spectacular farewell, never-ending farewell tour, which I've heard from many of my buddies talking about. But it was magnificent. And just got married in December of 2018. My wife, Suzanne, is from Australia, born and raised there. And, so, hey, I am living large. I'm, I'm out in San Diego, 72 sunny and low humidity, if you like that. I'm golfing. I have an amazing wife. We have a baby. Well, I did a lot of work, but she did most of the work. That baby comes along at the August 31st of 2019. Just everything is clicked along. I spent a lot of quality time with my 17-year-old Marshall. Life's great. I'm doing a little board work for New Travel, which is very exciting. Our ended up pulling off a great acquisition and a collaboration. And so anyway, things were just going swimmingly well in so many different ways. And then here comes 2020.
And then the bat phone rang. And on the other end, it's GBTA.
So 2020 comes along. I'll finish it out. I mean, I was just I'm kind of extraordinary because, here comes the pandemic first, and I'm in the midst of what I thought was a terrible storm. I had poopy diapers. My game was, a little rocky, but I was working on all. Anyway, here comes this extraordinary event, which I think at the time I was believing, hey, this is terrible. It's clearly having traumatic impact upon the industry, but it's just going to be over in a few months. But I'm just thinking, and Suzanne and Jordan left San Diego to give those to her mom and dad, grandparents for Jordy was March 1st, and the pandemic hadn't really gotten legs here in the U.S. so much, and so didn't think a thing. They were going to go on for say about a month and come back, and so all this transpires, and then of course we all know what happened, and so I mean. GBTA comes along and there's the call. And I know we'll have a chance to chat more about that, but things were going so beautifully. And the fact, of course, California, they shut down the golf courses. I mean, that's unconscionable, of course. I mean, if I was going to have to deal with the pandemic and my wife and baby boy gone, at least I could be doing is golfing, something contributing to society. And of course, that wasn't happening anyway. And then, of course, we'll get through the rest of the year, but it was, what a shock to the system.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's been a tough, right? It's been a tough year for the entire industry. And but one thing that keeps coming up in these conversations is the way the industry's weathered it, has pivoted, has, put innovation in order to manage it. We flipped settlement essentially. Where do we go from here, I guess, is the next question, right? Where do you guys think we head into 2021 and beyond? And, what's your outlook?
Well, we've been doing forecasts and we've been sharing them with our agency customers on a regular basis, validating that these are the types of things that they're seeing. And we were hoping to exit this year down something around 60% or so year on year. Shocking to even say that, but that was sort of our strategy and start 2021 at around that level and see probably something around an additional 2 years to 2.5 years of recovery to get back to where we were. It looks like we're going to finish the year maybe just a little shy of that projection. Clearly, the COVID increase over the last 6 weeks or so has put another damper. We were on a nice track in May. June kind of knocked us back about 5%. We're on a nice track again going into sort of September, and this more recent outbreak also knocked us back about 5%. So just to give people an idea of what the impact of these little surges is, that's kind of what we've been seeing. So, I'm optimistic. I think, vaccine is going to make a big difference. People have gotten a bit more comfortable with the idea of air travel. I do hear from folks that, there are fewer flights and fewer choices, but they're running fairly, occupancy or load factors are pretty good. So I think as vaccine gets out there, I'm expecting, I'm hopeful that the airlines' biggest problem is going to be how do they get service reinstituted fast enough, get pilots requalified, get airplanes back into the air, and that's the biggest problem that we're going to face. International travel has clearly been a huge obstacle to recovery. Transborder travel's not happening to any meaningful degree. Seeing obviously Mexico still happening, but not Canada. Hardly anywhere else in the world. So it won't take much to actually spark those markets and get things going again. So I'm a bit of I'm on the more optimistic side. I think we're going to have a better 2021 than people think. I don't think the recovery is going to take quite as long. Again, the restraining factor is probably going to be simply the airline's ability to get crews, airplanes back in service, back in the air.
Yeah.
Yeah, and hey, Mike, you said it beautifully and articulated it so well, as you always do. From GBTA's perspective, and what I can tell from a lot of discussions with folks on the buyer side and the supplier side, they're proud of what GBTA has done in this coronavirus polling. It's become kind of the gold standard. I wish we didn't have to do it at all, of course, but we send out to our membership, 9,000 worldwide, and it's a very high response rate. It's anywhere from 1,500 to 2,500, I think, over time. Started that back in March, got the first results out in April, and of course, not shocking. Basically, we ask companies, what's your current position on travel, and essentially 90% were like, well, we've either stopped or significantly reduced travel, both internationally and domestically. You go another month and then like 95% stopped internationally. And of course, if you average that out, a bunch went to 100%, nothing. Just where they're going, the borders are closed. So what can you do? And domestic started to trend a little better, but a lot of essential workers and the healthcare side of the biz and a number of things that not surprising in the pandemic situation. We got into the fall here, September, October, and what Mike was talking about, we saw material improvement, even though it's far from where it needs to be in a recovery. But in the poll, we saw like 70% of the companies had reduced travel or stopped domestic. I mean, literally 20-point change. And internationally had improved maybe 5 points, still nowhere where it needed to be. So from 95 down to 90 to 88. But it gave us hope. And you could see what was happening. People were starting to feel better, or you saw some of the numbers still not where they have to be, but we're getting better. And, I think a lot of that was led by, vacation, discretionary travel. And clearly there was some business travel, but not in mass like we've come to know. Need, and we'll ultimately see. So anyway, it's in this latest surge clearly put a damper on everything. But I will tell you, Mike, I'm an optimist. I'm the eternal optimist, and I'm not trying to be Pollyanna or dismiss how much of a challenge we've got going forward. And I don't care, airline, hotel, car rental or ground, TMCs, right? Everybody in this ecosystem, but we're going to get back on the other side, and we're going to do that because history is the best predictor of future activity and behavior. And we've had traumatic incidents like this before. I know not to this degree, so not saying that. This is stunning for even that's been around 3 or 4 decades in the business. But we thought the same thing after 9/11, and we thought pretty much the same thing after the 08, 09. I mean, we really got impacted big, and ultimately, we got back out of that and we made our way, and we ended up getting bigger than we were before. And so I have every belief that will happen again. I know it's going to take a little while, but I'm with Mike. It's going to start a strong recovery for the back half of 21, and then it'll just go from there.
Yeah, and I think Scott Kirby said something to the same effect last week at the Beat. And for those survey results, are they available on the GBTA website for folks to?
They are. Thanks for the plug, Peter. Yeah, gbta.org. So and we've sent them out regularly. So I'm happy if you want to come find me, I'll send them out personally to anybody who wants them. But they're on the website. You can get a link to them.
And while I'm plugging GBTA, for anyone interested, we're hosting weekly sales data on ourcorp.com as well, broken down by agency segments, so you can also check that out. As we continue kind of like having this discussion, I wanted to jump into, Mike, your career and your time at ARC and reflect on that a little bit. But I also want to remind folks that in the Q&A, if you have any questions for Mike and Dave, please go ahead and submit. We'll try to get through those. But Mike, I think for the folks online, it'd be interesting for you to provide kind of an overview on like your journey, just a quick, how you got into this, how you got into ARC, and how we got to where we are today.
Well, I did not start selling, UHP on campus like Dave did, but I got out of college. I was a theater major. No useful job prospects in sight. started working actually at an insurance company. And during the summer, I applied at the two hometown airlines, which at that time were North Central and Northwest. And about November, I got a letter from Northwest saying they wanted to hire me as a reservation agent. So I didn't have to think too long about it. That was the regulated era still at that time. Airlines jobs paid really well. I was going to get like a 50% pay increase by taking this job as a res agent. And so I accepted. And you didn't actually get. I know some airlines you actually got paid during the training period, but not us. Northwest, old school, baby. You don't get paid until you complete the training and start your first day of employment. So it was a really terrific place to break into the industry. They really were old school in their mentality. Very basic. We had 3 airframes, 727s, DC-10s, and 747s, and 2 power plants. The 10s and the 47s actually used the same engine. So super efficient. And of course, they were on strike a lot. So, it was the era of mutual aid where airlines paid each other when they were out on strike. And the CEO famously said, "We make more money when we're not flying than we do when we are." So it was also a building with no windows. The only glass in the place was like in the front entry. So I actually worked in the basement probably most of my career, but it didn't matter because no one else had any windows either. So did 5.5 years at Northwest. Great education, great basics in the industry. And my boss left and went to a TMC, Jelco Travel. And about 6 months later, he asked me if I wanted to come. By that point in time, I think I had 3 children, and I couldn't eat the airline tickets that were available. So corporate travel was a new thing at that time. I mean, 83, we were just a few years into deregulation, and commissions were high. It was a bit of the wild, wild west. And so I got a nice salary increase and went to work at this travel management company. Didn't know anything about it, really, other than they sold airline tickets as a part of their services. And did that for about 5 years, and the company was acquired. One of my colleagues who had worked in Washington had sold a bunch of government contracts, which I was on the operations side. I helped implement them. And the airlines actually hired him to run SATO, or SATO Travel, as the president of the company. And so he asked me to come out and be the general manager. So I was a fairly young man at that time. And I think I was 3 years old, and I came out to Washington, and I had like 14 of the 1,600 employees reporting to me at 650 offices all over the United States. So that was a big leap. And a couple years later, I ended up being the president and ran SATO until 99. Probably the biggest accomplishment there was getting out of government travel and expanding into corporate travel, where we were fortunate enough to handle the likes of Lockheed Martin and 3M and MITRE and Qualcomm and IBM's group business, really nice list of customers. And the airlines, being airline owned and being in the space of competitive selling, they weren't terribly comfortable with that. And so it was always difficult because my agency friends were constantly calling people like Dave and saying, "What are you doing with SATO? Why are they out there competing with us? I thought you were our friend." And so the industry decided to sell us, and we were bought by an investment group, stayed with them, great group of people. They 2 years later, they sold. I think they made about a 300% return on their investment. So I'm still on the Christmas card list for those guys. And the acquirer was Navigant, so stayed on with Navigant. Continued to look after the big corporate accounts, but also took over the Latin America region. Got to know Mr. Purpura, one of Dave's colleagues down there covering that for United. That was really a lot of fun. I had never really been south of Cancun, really thinking about the region. And Dave, I was surprised they actually do not speak Latin in Latin America.
Shocking. I know that. That's what I studied in high school and college. I was ready for Latin, and clearly Spanish and Portuguese was. I bought 8 tapes from Rosetta Stone. I'm still working on it.
So that was my level of knowledge about the region, and but tremendous. They were as licensees to us, and just really had a fabulous time getting to know that part of the world and the business practices down there and what that market was all about. So that was a real highlight. And I think back now to the fact that I used to think nothing about jumping on a 14-hour flight to get down to Buenos Aires or something like that. It was just a matter of routine. So definitely was an interesting part of my life. The Navigant sold to Carlson. They already had kind of a global network. So I thought, might be a good time to take a look around. And other airline-owned company, your other colleague, June Bennett, had just left ARC and created a vacancy there. And I stepped into that role and have been there ever since. And took over for my predecessor, David Collins, in 2011, and been looking after ARC since then.
Hey, Mike, was that chief operating officer? I can't remember the exact, when you first arrived at ARC.
Came in as, head of basically sales and customer care. So
okay.
June had started putting a sales force together, and so I inherited that group, and we were just expanding into the data business that time. It was a nascent business, but we established a data warehouse and started thinking, people might be interested in this kind of data. So that was part of my remit, was to try to grow that side of the business.
That's great. That's great. Well, and I mean that's kind of where we continue to grow, right? And ARC, I've only been here 5 years, so it's different. I've only been here for the Premo regime. But ARC's changed a lot since you first started. And I'm curious, like when you became CEO, what were some of those objectives that you had for the organization, and have we gotten there?
Well, David, my predecessor, had started a cultural change initiative during his time because he could see that we were too inwardly focused as an organization. I mean, what happened within the 4 walls at ARC was way more important than anything that happened outside those walls. And, as someone coming in from the outside, I just, I applauded him for, beginning that journey. And I really wanted to accelerate. I'm a big believer in the, culture eat strategy for breakfast mantra, and changing our culture and getting us, we use the simple, 2-axis diagnostic for, are you internally or externally focused, and are you flexible or are you controlling? And we were really internally focused and really controlling. And I knew if we wanted to sell products, that wasn't going to be, we couldn't sustain that. We really needed, the most important thing was really changing our culture, getting us more externally focused, getting our product portfolio much more flexible to meet customers where they are. And that's everything that I tried to do. I viewed through that lens of, how do we engage better with our customers? How do we understand what's going on in the market? How does that affect what we do internally? And that's continued to try to beat that drum my entire tenure.
Yeah, and now we're moving into yet another space with the omnichannel retailing. It's really exciting. when you look back, what's your proudest moment, or I'll say proudest moments if you need to at ARC?
There's certainly been a lot of things I've been really pleased about. But I think one of the more seminal moments at least for ARC, was really our investment in Black Sky last year. And not so much, I think that's going to end up being a really positive investment for us over time. It's still a very nascent technology and early stages of initial implementations. But more importantly, it was what it said about the company to the rest of the world. Internally, it meant a lot because, our board had to approve it. It was the first time we'd ever done an investment. And it was, it took many years of building up our balance sheet. I mean, we operated really as sort of a not-for-profit until about 10 years ago. And so actually building up some financial muscle and resources and getting the trust of the board to go out and do that acquisition was a really big moment for the company. And it paid off in the fact that, my dear friend Carmine Carpenzano, who's the CEO at New Travel, really hadn't entertained ARC as a potential person to talk to about investing in them until that happened. It really got us on the radar I was like, oh, well, you've got money. That's always a positive. People always like to become friendly with you then. And B, there was a strategic element that came into play that people hadn't looked at us in that light. So, like I said, it didn't seem like all that big of a thing at the time, but the glow, the halo around that, I think really, to people who were paying attention, it sent a strong message. And I tip my hat to my colleague Ralph Pertzer over at ATPCO. He did the same thing with Root Happy, and it really changed the way people looked at that organization as well. And happy to say both he and my friend Ralph Kaiser at UATP, all three of us got BTN most influentials this year. So for
3 times, right, Mr. Premo? I mean, you've made it.
My third time. I was saying, I lost track of Michael White's age. I think he was like 7 or 8 times. So I'm not even in his league. But I'll take that. That's a very nice recognition. I'm really grateful to our BTN friends. But again, for these 3 industry companies, these were not companies that were viewed as bastions of innovation very long ago.
Right.
For all 3 of us to get that kind of recognition, shows how hard we're working to respond to what the industry is looking for, not being driven by publishing industry standards and waiting for the United Nations to sign off on a character change on a ticket code. So it's nice to see all of us in this space trying to get more aggressive and respond more agile, respond more quickly to the market.
Yeah, I think it says a lot just in terms. I could talk about industry owned and innovation all day and the value that it brings, that. But I think it is a really important step for all 3 organizations to continue this drumbeat of innovation and bringing value back to to the industry with very different focus than what a traditional commercial for-profit organization might do. So I'm going to turn to Dave, but first I have one quick question that came in for you. Someone's asking when your collection of bow ties will be listed on eBay.
I've got a number of suggestions of what to do with bow ties, and our chairman of the board, Bonnie, I think thinks I should put them in a shadow box or something and make them mementos. I do encourage people, as Dave knows, I'm a big believer in personal branding as well as corporate branding, and the bow tie spot in the industry is available for someone that wants to pick it up here. So happy to mentor anybody that needs a little tip on bow ties. I've been in gotten a lot of emergency phone calls before weddings and things. Got a bow tie, I can't figure out how to do this, Mike. So happy to turn the mantle over to somebody else.
I don't think anybody can replace or take the mantle from Mike Premo. I think you've got a legendary, like, Hall of Fame position there. And I've seen you put it on with your golf shirts. I mean, you just have a special, distinct look, Mr. Premo. So I don't know if anybody maybe down the road, maybe somebody you mentor after a while. It's got to be a transition period. I think that's the key.
Well, it's I found out that they were practical. I mean, us height challenged Dave are long ties.
What are you talking about? I'm 5'9" with my hair puffed up. I don't know what story.
Long ties are kind of a challenge, right? Because you got to tie them right, because you got to get the ends to kind of match. Otherwise, it's down at your knees practically. I
just cut them off. I just took a scissor and cut them off.
But I found out that you don't drizzle gravy on a bow tie, whereas it hits your shirt instead. So, and you can clean a shirt, but you can't really clean a tie. So I figure it's been very practical. I've saved a small fortune in ties that I would have otherwise thrown away that, I could just wash my shirt.
Love it.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Dave, let's wait over to you for a second. So it's been a challenging year for GBTA, not just because of the pandemic, but the other stuff. And so you came in kind of at this really pivotal point for it. How'd you approach it? How have you been kind of managing that journey?
Well, thanks, Peter. But before I even get to that, I loved hearing Mike's comments, and we've been friends and colleagues for decades, and I just I want to, while I can, to salute Mike Premo for, it's not meant to be a coronation ceremony or his last day on the job. He's got several weeks, and you get your happy button here, Premo, right up until the very end. But to recognize his special qualities as a leader, and I loved hearing him talk about that evolution. ARC was solid but very transactional company, and to see that breath of fresh air, and he took it. It focused on his clients, call it TMCs and the airlines, and his staff, and listened and took the time to understand the issues and try to find ways not only to just do a great job of the basics, but then expand. You got hats off to Mike, and he's never one to brag or blow his own horn. The guy is a really special talent and has done an amazing amount for the entire travel industry. And I love knowing that I always work with Premo. I could call him up if there was any issues, and he was on it. And but he was always be very candid. He would take the time to talk with you. And he was smart enough to figure out how to get my old boss, Bonnie Wrights, who is one of the all-stars really in the industry, from her days at Eastern and System One and Continental. And has done an extraordinary job, I believe, as the chairwoman of the board. That's a good boss to have in addition to all the airline shareholders. Bonnie is, they don't come any better. And that Premo was smart enough to listen to our mutual good friend, Jerry Behrens, probably on that Block Sky acquisition and all that Mr. Behrens has got going on, who's one of the brightest minds also in the industry. And he's kind of enjoying a little semi-retirement, but Jerry's not shy about calling Mike or myself or many others to get things done. He's a special talent. But anyway, it's a testament to Mr. Premo and his leadership for that long, and all the different areas that he's focused on, and then to come out and see ARC, even in the most difficult time in the history, that it's going to be fine. And it's going to make it stable enough. It's diversifying. Like I said, Block Sky and new travel and probably other options. So, Mike, I'm tipping my hat to you because, you deserved an easier send off, but nobody will ever forget 2020. And that was the year Mike Premo hung his hat up for ARC after an extraordinarily successful career, right? And made a real difference for everybody. And it's not often you get a leader that goes and nobody has anything bad to say about. I wish I had that, but that was never true. For Premo, other than maybe some people got a debit memo and he didn't really issue it, but he had to. I'm sure there's some people still pissed off at him about debit memos, but other than that, Premo's like the most popular guy on the planet. So anyway, Mike, I'm tipping my hat to you. And like I said, that the BTN, that we love the guys at BTN, the North Star Travel Group. I mean, that recognition, while obviously identified to the travel industry, it's an important one and a real one. And that was great that they recognized you and everybody they do every year. It's a great thing. So Mike, I have a Diet Mountain Dew going here. I wish I had a little stronger beverage, but I'm tipping. No, I speak on behalf of everybody that's watching this right now. If not live, maybe on video, we'll all be tipping our glasses to you and thanking you for doing what you've done for the industry. There's my kind.
Very kind of you, Dave. Thank you.
My pleasure.
All right, now on to your GBTA story.
Okay, so listen, I've obviously into 2020, and we're dealing with this pandemic, obviously having dramatic impact on the travel industry. I'm worried about my friends at United and throughout the industry. TMC, I mean, I'm talking to a lot of people, and I know everybody's just in a little bit of shock because we've never seen such demand destruction in the travel business. I mean, we've had terrible impacts to the business, like I previously mentioned, whether 9/11 or the true global financial recession, but nothing this dramatic, this wide, just widespread everywhere. And so, I mean, I'm there. I'm just talking to a lot of people, trying to provide a little comfort and hopefully a little perspective that going through ups and downs in my own life, certainly on the business side, but any of the other issues, I mean, hey, we're going to get through it. Don't worry about it. Then the call comes in. And a whole nother extraordinary saga of 2020. My little brother, and I like to call, but my successor, United, Jake Safolia, called, who obviously is serving as SVP of Worldwide Sales and very proudly serving as the Vice President of the Allied Leadership Council of GBTA. And he called and said, hey, listen, you probably read, we've got some changes going on and they're challenging times. And would you consider helping us out? And I said immediately, like, no chance. I mean, that's back in Virginia. And you know what? I'm not an association expert. I love GBTA and I care about it greatly. And I'm sorry about some of the challenges, but there's so many challenges going on, and my wife and baby should be home soon. That's probably just not the right thing. And then I got a call from Dorothy Dowling and Bart Sarin. And then I got calls from folks totally unrelated to GBT, but top suppliers, my friends at Carlson, Vaughan Lee and Amex GBT, on the TMC side, BCD. I mean, I could go right down the list. I got calls from my friends at Delta and American and Southwest. I mean, you want to call, everybody was checking in like, hey, maybe be helpful if you could, consider something there. And so anyway, I really was humbled by that. And, I'm a huge fan of the industry. I love the people. And I believe in GBTA, and it's critical for the industry, this business travel industry, have an association that represents our interest and unifies people and brings people together and all of the things that go with GBTA on education or research, legislative advocacy issues, you just name it. So I said, yes, I will step in on an interim basis. Can I do it for 3 weeks? They said, no. How about 3 months? No. Okay. How about through the end of the year? Yes, I'll do that. And listen, it's been an honor. It's been tough because there was a lot of issues in play and some more, controversial than others. But the bottom line, this is a great association with people that wanted to do well, and we have to do better. And you obviously take whatever situation that's handed to you, you evaluate it, you listen, you acknowledge where you had shortcomings, and you move on, and you find a way to get better. And so I've been very proud to be a part of this renaissance of restoration, if you want. I mean, again, it's always been a really good organization, but going through a pandemic, you appreciate that it's got some unique challenges. And so I do believe we'll come out of this understanding fully that we're still in a terribly difficult time, better than ever, stronger than ever. And, who I get to ultimately hand off the reins to will be a new executive director in January 2021. And whoever she or he will be, I know will do an incredible job. And so anyway, it's been extraordinary. And I've been, again, just, I called Mike. I mean, just a little side note, because I know he's smiling about this. I did call Mr. Premo and ask him, do you think I'm insane to do this? Just because, I'm here in California and I'm retired, and to jump back into the middle of the fire. And he had some of the best advice. And he said, well, just what matters to you, and think carefully about it, because it'll be a lot more work than whatever they're telling you. It's going to be 3 times as much work. And did you remember, you're on the Pacific coast? You're on Pacific time, right? So if anybody's meeting in the Eastern Standard Time Zone or Europe, you're going to be up at dark 100. And he was right. That was some of the best advice. I didn't really think through that as well. But Mike, you got to talk about the call.
I blame myself. I'm sorry, Dave.
Well, you did, but you had great advice, and it was candid and forthright. And even in spite of hey, think carefully, I think you can make a difference, but it's a lot in the association world, and it has. But man, I'm so thankful to do it. And I said yes, and I've got a great staff and this great board that is working with me. I mean, we've all had to, acknowledge where we've had these shortcomings and work to improve that. And so anyway, Peter, I've gone on, but I am excited about that work because I believe in it going forward.
We owe you all a debt of gratitude, Dave. I see you're one of the few people that had the kind of wellspring of goodwill in the bank with enough people in this industry, everyone. And you really, that was just, I think, a critical ingredient to reestablishing GBTA's cred. And you took your share of bullets along the way here in a pretty short period of time. And not too many people could have done that without having that support, friendship, relationships across the industry. And I think we all do believe that GBTA is a great organization that this industry deserves to have out there and successful and working on our behalves. And probably a good thing that Suzanne got stuck in Australia. And
Probably right, my friend. Thank you for the kind comments. And to anybody on, we have plenty left to do and to improve. And there's people have been very frank. And some of this we brought on ourselves. Some of it's just, we're in the midst of all this together in this travel industry. And so, we have so many things we want to improve upon. But it's, we've healed some wounds, calmed the waters a bit, refocused on what's most important, the membership. And Peter, you're talking just some of the things, the Premo playbook. I mean, we tried to just refocus on those things that are most important. And in the end, we got to, together, we can thrive again. And we've got that convention scheduled for next July. And I think it'll be very successful, and it'll probably be a hybrid event. And some folks will feel comfortable coming. I hope it's a lot, and others will not, and they'll find a way to get there virtually. But I think for the sake of the business travel industry, I think we all need to get back together. We know that being together is critical. You can only do so much over a camera, and it's beautiful that we've had this, and it's been helpful in light of a pandemic. But there's one drink you got. I use the word for you. Anyway, I think we're headed to much better days, as I've said before, and I think Mike feels the same way.
Yeah, I agree. And I was at ACT during the financial crisis, and I'll tell you, there's nothing that helps an association better than having to have those frank conversations. Right, with sponsors, with partners, with their members. And so I'm really looking forward to seeing where GBTA heads for sure, because you're right, we need a role. Somebody needs to fill that role. I had a conversation yesterday with somebody who was brought up standardization of RFPs, and I'm like, well, that's a GBTA thing, right? Who else is going to do that, right? So again, thank you for all that you've done. But I guess the lingering question is, are you ready for retirement part 2?
I am absolutely ready to re-retire. Probably in a little bit different way. I have come to the realization, and if you retire a little early, and I'm not young, but maybe a little younger than normal, I was very blessed to be able to do it, and kind of had the new family and getting to spend time with Marshall, who I was on the road 200 days a year for, I don't know, over a decade. And so it just, I appreciated it all, but I probably didn't appreciate it as much as I should have until you jump back in and go work full time. And I'm talking seriously full time. So I think I'll appreciate it a little bit more. Obviously, I'm proud to serve on a couple of boards. One's New Travel, and I'm excited about that. Carmine and Mike and all the folks. Mike, it's a great group. And then with a nonprofit that I'm involved with. But yeah, I'm gonna just enjoy every minute with the family. When Suzanne and Jordan finally get back here, and they've been gone 9 months. So, but yes, I'm going to make sure I enjoy every second. It's the schedule flexibility. It's a little bit about time. We talk about there's no more valuable thing on the planet than time. I mean, you never know how much you're going to have of it, and what do you get to do with it? And I've come to that realization that's probably more important than anything. So it's been, like I said, it's been an incredible ride. And I'm glad I had the opportunity to do it, and thankful to everybody involved with GBTA for that. But yeah, I'm going to get off, and it's not off into the sunset again, so to speak, but it's, I'm not going to be working as many hours as I am today. That's for sure.
It'll be well earned, that's for sure.
Thank you.
All right, let's go into some stories, because I know you guys have more than your fair share. So, let's start happy, right? What's, from as you guys look back, what are kind of the happiest moments of your careers?
Well, for me, it's, one of the first is actually getting that job offer letter from Northwest Airlines. I mean, I was frankly, I'd forgotten I'd even put my application in. So to actually get this stuff in the mail 4 months later, was such a delightful surprise and shock. But so I was really happy to get that kind of an opportunity, and I was just turning 22 years old at the time, and to have you be given the keys to the world, basically, that the aviation industry allows you to access was tremendous. Otherwise, it's so many small memories, that seem the happiest to me. It's small group settings of, talking to our interns at ARC and getting them excited about our industry. Hearing the stories from our call center team about, how they helped out a customer with a challenging situation. They're just those little things that you sort of have nothing really to do with, are really some of the happiest things that I could think of. So it's a thousand little moments of joy like that I think probably all of us experience in our working lives, or I hope we do, that have made being here worthwhile.
Yeah, I love to hear that, Mike, because I would have said, hey, I didn't know back in college when I got an offer from Eastern Airlines that was going to lead to a career I love, right? Not a job. It's just amazing how it went on. A couple of the happiest times, and I had so many. I mean, that's why I'm so thankful, because I loved my work. I loved the job and the people I got to interact with and learn. And I feel blessed every day about that. I know people say that's kind of cliche or BS, but if you find something you really do love to do, and I know that's then you never really show up for work. I mean, there's plenty of work in the airline business, but I love that gig. And I never aspired to actually have responsibility for people. I was happy being an account manager, district sales manager. I just got lucky. I did work hard, but I got lucky, and the timing was right, and people had faith in me, and was able to end up having responsibility for a lot of folks who thankfully were a lot smarter, more effective, and better looking than me. That's the key. But two things: that when the merger happened, which I was all for, between Continental and United, I just thought two extraordinary networks, never going to be easy to put the cultures together, but I knew long term it would be a great thing, and it has been. I mean, there was plenty of the bumpy roads, but the fact I didn't get voted off the island when the merger happened, which could that happens in mergers. So that was a very happy moment. My boss was it was the Continental, Jim Compton, who's one of my favorite humans on the planet and brilliant. And, but he could have gone a different direction if he needed to. And he would have said, I love you, Dave, but I had to do what I had to do from business. But he had faith in me. And I was so thankful to him for just like Bonnie, there's certain bosses you think about. And then from there, probably one of the happiest moments is our worldwide sales meeting in United. I think it was 2013. It might have been 14. You've got the combined sales force, obviously people from all different backgrounds. And I remember I had my son Marshall at the time, who was 11 or 12, I believe, he was taking piano lessons. I brought him to the worldwide sales meeting because, of course, I'm a dad. I'm proud of my son. He's obviously been through a lot. He lost his mom, my late wife, Tracy, to breast cancer a couple of years, 2-3 years previously. So he'd been through a lot of that and a move to Iowa from Texas and all this. So anyway, he gets on stage in front of 800 United sales professionals and plays Rhapsody in Blue. And he did it beautifully. And there were tears everywhere just because he's a great kid and he's fun. And, they'd known his story and he did it so well. And he was so nervous, but he did it so beautifully. So you talk about probably one of the happiest moments in my career to see my son do that and to have the response. People bring it up to this day. They remember.
Awesome.
That's awesome. That's so awesome. Let's switch it up and go the other end. And you can say stuff from 2020 because 2020 was rough, but I'd be interested to know what another really challenging moment in your career was, pandemic aside.
Yeah, I mean, I think for so many of us that is going to be number one, but it's current and it's still happening. So I think it's fair to say, set that aside for a minute. For me, it was probably during my Sato travel days. We handled, all the Army, all the Navy, a good chunk of the Air Force, good chunk of the Marine Corps, a big chunk of civilian business. And it was all still in the process of being competed. So, we went out and competed for these government contracts, and the Army put out its contracts. And one day we got the word that we had lost it all. $350 million of air out the door in 60 days or 90 days. It's gone. And we were doing about $1 billion of air at that time. So 35% of the business, poof, just disappeared. Probably between 400 and 500 employees. It was just, and obviously, it's covering a certain amount of overhead. So you're concerned about all that. One of our Marine Corps branch managers about 6 months later sent me a rock commemorating that day. It was from Death Valley, the lowest point in the United States.
Wow.
And that was a really, a tough thing to take. And, but, coincidentally, that was right at the time that we had started pursuing corporate business. And within a year, we won $300 million of corporate business. So if you actually looked at our top line revenue, it looked like nothing happened. But there was an incredible amount, that 300 million out, 300 million in, new customers, new systems, it was, incredibly challenging time. But that was definitely one of the low water marks of, wow, what do you do now type of things.
Wow. That is a big hit. Oh, man. Hey, so from my perspective, and again, like I said, 2020, when I first started the GBTA gig, I told Mike that, man, this is very sophisticated stuff. This is a sophisticated situation here. There is a lot between the board and then your staff, and then you've got the committees, advisory boards, chapters, and partners. It's just amazing. So in trying to get everybody together, that just the challenge of itself, I'll never forget that because I just didn't know near as much as I needed to. And that's when you realize, wow, I hope I didn't get over my head here. And I learned fast and people were so patient and they were great. And so that was the shock of this year, as well as just this huge hit. But throwing 2020 out, I must say, though there's a few times, and I'll make it quick, but I mean, hey, my last boss was Scott Kirby, who I love. I mean, he's brilliant, he's fair, he's tough, but fair. And I'm so happy he succeeded Oscar, who did a brilliant job, Munoz at United to be CEO. And I've known Scott a long time, and anytime you're with Scott, he's just got this, he's a genius kind of from his analytical capabilities. But I'm a better sales guy than he is. I will say, I'm confident of that. I mean, he's become a really good sales guy, but you don't want to sit there and not know your numbers. And I just remember that first meeting with him, and he's similar brilliance that Compton had before, but Jim and I knew each other for so long, and I'm trying to, justify things to Mr. Kirby, and I know he's got his computer mind going, I just don't believe you. That's all right. And how do you answer that? I mean, thankfully over time, I got to understand his style better, and he was great with me, and we really it was a lot of incredible time. But that is a tough position. That was a tough memory. I remember with my new big boss, who was president at the time. The other times, of course, 9/11, which everybody in the industry, I mean, it's so tragic for our country, let alone the travel business and specifically the airlines that had these horrible human tragedies with the loss, and to get things going again. And I know everybody talks about that, but singularly to just maybe a unique scenario was back in 98 and 9, talking about Michael Whitesage, who, by the way, is doing beautifully, spending quality time in Nevada. And, is when Continental had the audacity, and granted, we had gone through a lot. I mean, I'd had phone books thrown at me going in as a Continental sales manager. We didn't always have the greatest reputation. Thankfully, Gordon Bethune arrived, who was amazing and helped us this incredible turnaround. So between he and Larry Kellner, Jeff Smizek, Jim and others, then we really got Continental right into a great position. And then we decided, this is when the CFO said, hey, can you tell me how these corporate discounts are working? I mean, it looks like it's like in the multi-millions. Can you actually tell me it's getting you return on investment? I said, no. And I remember we just decided we needed a solution to try to measure how these corporate programs are working, other than just to be competitive. And that's when Corporate Insight came in, administered by the Prism system. And when you're the 5th largest airline in the United States, and you basically say, hey, you can only get a corporate discount if you agree to this. You want to talk about you went from maybe popular to extraordinarily unpopular. That was some big, difficult times. And my team they were amazing. And, we ultimately worked it out with our corporate clients and our great TMC partners. But that was a bumpy ride back in 98, 99 to be so bold. It ended up working out, and, it'll be arguably, not, people won't say it was always that great, but it did work for us, and the industry ultimately embraced it. And I think everybody did well in the end, but that was a very difficult moment.
Yeah, I can't imagine that. I'm not a sales guy, so that's terrifying.
Yeah.
We're going to run a little bit over, but, I wanted to just ask you both, one more question, and sort of, someone early to the mid in their career in travel, what piece of advice would you give them?
For me, I think I'd say sort of two things. First, be brave. You don't get ahead by playing it safe and waiting for somebody to tap you on the head and say, here's an opportunity for you. You've got to show initiative and desire to do that. And the other part of that is, be willing to take on tasks that nobody else wants to do. We sort of, one of my big breaks, I think, actually was, we had a vacancy in a leadership role back in the Jelco days that they needed an executive to go out, to fill a role in Philadelphia. Well, we knew the company was actually on the market at that time, so they didn't really want to recruit anybody into that situation, not knowing what was going to happen. They knew, it would be difficult. So I volunteered, and it meant commuting. to Philadelphia, knowing the company was, going to be sold. But, it gave me real customer experience, real P&L experience. Some of my colleagues from that time, I'm still in touch with today and have worked with me multiple times over the years. And that wouldn't have happened if I hadn't put my hand up and said, was it popular with my wife and young children for me to commute to Philadelphia 3-4 days a week for almost a year? No. But, it does take a certain level of commitment and drive and initiative and courage, frankly, to advance yourself. So, don't be fearful, take those chances, make yourself available, let people know that you want that. That would be some of my advice.
Yeah, I don't know how you get much better than that. And Mike said it all. My only additional comments would be, just listen. Listen to be careful, because us sales guys in particular, and I'm guilty of it. You can sit there and talk all day, but probably the best thing you could do in any position, I don't care what you're in, is to listen carefully to your fellow employees. And you're always going to listen to your boss, but the people that work for you, and most importantly, generally your customers is that's why you're in business. Don't ever lose sight of that fact. The other thing is, and Mike hit that, was a great put about be willing to take on new things and raise your hand. I mean, that really, I did that for a lot of projects. And once you do that, people start to recognize, wow, Abe, adaptable, willing to jump in, help with other stuff, isn't just stuck in one area. That was huge. So I compliment you, Mr. Premo. That's a big one, I think. For somebody that's just starting out or mid-career, be willing to raise your hand and go ahead. You're going to probably have to do some extra work, but it will pay off handsomely. I think one of the things I remember talking to my friends, Mr. Campbell and Jonas at the company Dime, and they were kind enough to do an interview with me. And I said to them, I see business people all the time, and maybe they have a notion that you have to be so hard and tough, and you can be those things. I mean, there's a time and a place, but be kind and be gracious with the people you're working with, either A, your colleagues, or B, your customers. It doesn't take that much, mean it. People will detect quickly if it's not a real sincere or genuine effort. And I think we've seen that in this country the last 4 years. Like, can we find a way to show some kindness and caring? It doesn't mean you can't be tough on certain business issues, and you gotta, you make difficult decisions, but you can still be kind and gracious with others. And I hope that's not lost on people, whatever business, not necessarily just the travel industry. It's just everything. You can still do really well. You can get ahead. You can be successful. You can make plenty of dough, all those things, which people, that's what you do, try to make a good living. But you can be kind and gracious and actually be successful simultaneously.
That is true.
That was a very selfish question to ask because I wanted to make sure I took those notes. Anything that you guys want to add that we didn't get to?
I'll let Dave
anything?
First, and I'll wrap. How's that?
Excellent. Thanks again to everybody at ARC. I think so much of the team. Great successor, Lori, is going to do wonderful. I know you guys have worked together a lot through the years, and you got a great team there, but what a great passing the mantle on somebody is great talent and will take the organization to the next level, right? You're mentoring, and it's a beautiful thing. Had to get that in again, Mr. Premo. So congrats, Lori, and to everybody at ARC. I know you realize how fortunate it's been to have Mike Premo there. And to everybody that is listening, I want to thank everybody out there. If this is the last time I get a chance to do a webinar, we've got a few more at GBTA, but thanks for all your support through this interim executive director adventure. I'm very grateful, whether it's been volunteering hours or financial support. Great direct, the direct members have been excellent with their insights for me. So I want to thank, and to everybody, hey, don't lose the faith. We're going to have 2021. We're going to do well. And so I wish everybody a healthy, safe holiday season coming up. I know we may not be able to be with everybody we love and care about because it's probably the right thing to do. But next year, going to be spectacular. And I believe that with all my heart. I may be down in Australia a lot. I'm not sure. My wife may just not want to come back. I'm starting to think she just really likes it in Melbourne. And so we'll see how that all plays out. But thanks again for the chance to be a part of this today. And to everybody listening, really, it's been a lot of fun.
Thanks so much, Dave. Thanks for making the time. For me, I want to tell one little story that I think encapsulates a lot of what I've been aspiring to and what the team at ARC has helped to create. We had one of our agency executives called, and he said that he was congratulating me on my retirement and stuff, and said, I brought in a new guy into the company a couple of months ago, and part of his orientation, we were getting him around the office, and we have the team that works on ARC and the ARC reports, and he said, "Who's ARC?" And he said, and I said, "Well, they're an important business partner for us." And he said, at that moment, I stopped and said, Mike said he wanted to be an important business partner for us, and I didn't think it was going to be possible. And here I am telling this new employee as part of their orientation that this is what ARC is. So he just wanted to thank me for that, and to say that had happened. And we have worked so hard to change our relationship with particularly our agency customers, but all our customers. And I don't think I could have had a better send off than that. And I want everybody at ARC to know that and to hear that as well, because it's what we've been aspiring to. So great story, and it was a great send off for me. So beautiful
Awesome.
thing.
So
It is. Love that. That's your new tagline, pal.
I think that's it, Peter.
Well, thank you guys so much. Dave, thank you for coming back, and all of your commitment to GBTA and keeping that ship moving full steam ahead. And I'm really excited about where it's heading. And Mike, I can't say enough about your leadership. I will never forget exactly where I was in Tampa when you got up in front of the leadership team and said, "Well, this pandemic is starting to affect our numbers," and you've been nothing but transparent with all of us since, and it's truly something that I'll forever take in my career, that transparency, that honesty, that resolve and commitment to keep us going. So thank you guys both. Thank you to our audience, who are, there's plenty of people still around. This is great. We'll be back in January with our Travel Connect 2021 virtual series, and I believe that we're going to be focusing on sustainability, which is near and dear to my heart. And also, I know United just had a great announcement around their zero goals, or zero carbon emission goals. There it is. So I'm really looking forward to that conversation. And we're also going to touch on innovation next year, more omni-channel, because you can't get enough omni-channel, and duty of care, and obviously the recovery. So here's to 2021. Thank you, Dave. Thank you, Mike, and thank you to all who are on.